Hi Energy Citizens! In this video I'm going to show you how all the data contained in the territory cards must be introduced in the Excel book. As I told you, the execution sheet contains the main characteristics of the territory you represent. You see it's divided into three parts: energy system, initial data negotiation, and summary. Energy system contains the information about the way that your country is using to produce its energy. Initial data negotiation contains the data about the resources it has available. And summary shows the final result of that energy system. For example, what's the economic cost of your system, its carbon footprint, how much of your consumption comes from renewable resources, and so on. In the website, you can find a PDF file where I provide a definition of the information each cell contains. Also, you may try to figure it out from the formulas in the Excel. To start the game, you need to specify the initial situation of your country given in your territory card. First of all, we have the data about the energy consumption of the country. This must be introduced here, in the cell Z29, total consumption. By the way, remember the golden rule I gave you. You can only edit cells in white. You cannot modify anything else in the Excel book. Okay, next the budget must be introduced here, the cell Z27. The information about the land area goes here in cells L29 and L31. Next, the hydropower capacity of your country must be introduced into cell F31. Bioenergy capacity goes into cell L27, and the mineral resources available into cell S27. The electrification rate is introduced in cell AG31. And then we find the electric mix, which is the part not so trivial to introduce. First, note that the electric mix appears here below, but these cells are in color, so we cannot modify them directly. Instead, what we must do is to start increasing the amount of each energy progressively until the electric mix fits the one in the territory card. The values in the mix now are 0 because we have no energy plants introduced. So the Excel assumes that my country cannot produce any energy and it has to import its electricity from outside. That's why we find this large value here in the cell of imported electricity. And this is the cost of importing all this electricity from outside in millions of euros. Also, the Excel assumes that all the energy that is not being consumed in terms of electricity comes from fossil fuels. So this is the amount of fossil fuels used and the cost they have. This is quite realistic, since in most countries this non-electric part corresponds to vehicles and industry, which essentially consume oil and carbon. Okay, let's try now to fit the electric mix. This is easier if you start first by fitting the value of the renewable sources. We can start with solar energy, that in case of France represents 7% of the electric mix. Then we go here to photovoltaic energy and start to increase the number of plants in operation. Note that we have also concentrated solar plants available. But in most countries, solar power is captured through photovoltaic cells, so this is the option we can use by default. Now, if I say that my country has 1000 photovoltaic plants in operation, then we see that in the electric mix, solar now represents around 2% of the electric mix. And so the 98% remaining is still from importations. To get 7% of solar energy, I need to increase the number of plants up to 3,750. Next, I do the same for eolic energy. I can progressively increase the number of eolic plants until I reach a production of 8%, which is the value that appears in the card for France. To do this, I need to introduce 9,000 eolic plants. If I do the same for bioenergy and hydropower, I need to introduce 0 plants for bioenergy as France does not use this kind of production in a significant way, and 815 plants for hydropower. Once I finish with renewables, I go for nuclear energy. I increase slowly nuclear power until it represents 62% of electricity. Note that France is clearly a pro-nuclear country, so it produces most of its electricity in this way. When I go up to 49.5 gigawatts of nuclear energy, then I get this 62%. In reality, France has much more nuclear power than this, but most nuclear plants are not being used all of the time. You have in the website a short exercise available to understand this idea in detail, but this is something we don't need to introduce in the game. Finally, I go for thermal plants. I increase the power available slowly, and if I do that, I reach 12% of the electric mix for a power of 48 gigawatts. Again, this value does not necessarily correspond to the real one, but it's enough for the game. Now all the data from the territory card is introduced in the Excel book. Going to the summary part, we can now see the characteristics of the energy system of the country. We see, for example, the total cost of installing all these plants. Or we see the cost of producing all the energy of the country, or the annual carbon footprint of the country. All this process of introducing the data is something that the teams can do for them as a part of their training, mostly as a way to work and understand better the meaning of the data in the territory card. However, if you play the game with younger people, then you might prefer to give them the Excel with all this data already introduced in advance, so you can skip this part. In any case, once you have all this data implemented in the Excel book, now you have the picture of the energy system of your country. And you can start trying to spend money in building new plants to change that energy system. In the next videos, I will show you how to do that. Thank you for watching and for learning about the world energy system. Let's play the game.